Thank you. I'm Park Jun-hyung from Korea Venture Capital Investment. And today, it is a great honor for me to deliver my presentation here, so thank you. Today, I would like to cover this fund of funds and our health accounts funded by the government and how this investment is going on and what kind of achievements we have so far. First of all, we will take a look at the statistics of fund of funds. And if you visit our website, you will see this, and I'll briefly tell you what these numbers represent. First of all, if you take a look at the total fund size, then 4.1 billion US dollars. And this is the government subsidies. And so that translates into almost 7 trillion Korean won so far, and based on this fund. And we came up with 901 companies, and we have been covering foreign investors and those institute investors. And based on this 901 funds, the number of the portfolio companies is tallied at 7,572. And so all the amount is 19.9 billion US dollars. And we received that investment, and we are currently delivering money to the market. And next, I'll briefly tell you about the business itself. And there are 10 ministries are currently providing funds to this fund of funds. And based on this, we have these resources to partnership with other government entities, and based on their policy needs, we can come up with different portfolios and make investment in other companies. And I'll move on to some details. And so far, there are some funds that we're currently operating. The statistics is the data from the first quarter of 2021, and this data is from December 2020. And the numbers differ a little bit, however, as I mentioned, through operating this fund, there are investments being made here. And based on this, and I just mentioned that there are 7,000, and this data was made last year, so the latest data shows that over 7,000 companies are working on this investment. And based on this investment, when the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak began, the government entities and we worried that there would be some tanked, nosedived investment. However, of course, that we did see some investment decrease. However, nowadays there are some investment in bio sector. So that the investment actually increased recently. So about 4.3 trillion in the Korean won investment was made, and that made a record investment. And this shows the amount that the Korean government made investment into the fund of funds. And despite the COVID-19 pandemic, and this is showing this firm increase. And if you take a look at this LP, you can see how active different entities are in the market. And this data is from 2019. And there it shows KFOF, which means Korean Fund of Funds. And this accounts for 21% of the entire amount. And others, there are FIB and Korean Pension System and Korean Investment Bank and Growth Bank, among other investment entities and venture capital companies and other retail investors compose of this amount. And this composition itself is that while we are keep witnessing the increased growth of the amount, however, the percentage of KFOF is kind of decreasing because other retail investors are actively participating in the market. That is why. And as I has mentioned before, the fund of funds, the total amount is keep increasing, and accordingly, the amount invested in this fund is keep increasing as well. And I'm not sure if you will actually feel the difference. However, if you take a look at this, the percentage of investment compared to GDP ratio, it out exceeds that of China. And next, one of our prime goals is that we are planning to make unicorn companies to go public. And in terms of those unicorn companies, we account for this number, and it is keep increasing. And the number for those investment receiving companies are keep increasing. And I'll briefly mention some other companies, but you are familiar with other companies, but since this company works overseas, so you do not know. So here is an AI company, and more than 100 million people are using this HyperConnect application, and overseas users account for 99% of the entire users, and the sales reached 257.9 billion Korean won, and the total revenue is 24.7 billion won, and went public on Nasdaq market, and it acquired at 1.9 trillion Korean won, and so this is our goal, making those companies go public. And if you take a look at those companies that go public on KOSOK in 2011, in the future, we will see this increase, and 63.5% of companies received fund of funds investment, and those subsidiary investment received companies showed much faster growth compared to the opposite, and it shows much more investment and relatively short period of time. And in terms of fund of funds, I'll move on to the details. And the first goal of the government perspective and goal is job creation, and that is also our prime goal as well. And those companies that did not receive our investment and those companies that received our investment, the survival rate of the company differed. And of course, if a company receives fund, then it can survive longer. That is our common sense. However, those companies that received some debt and loaned, it showed a higher survival rate. And if you received investment and it showed growth, and it shows that a meaningful sign that it does not act as an adverse result. And employment growth rate showed 32.5%. And in terms of biotech, this graph shows the differences, and there are many graphs are intertwined. But about a decade ago, when I said I'm going to invest in biopharmaceutical companies, other people said no, you shouldn't. But recently, if someone says so, people says, oh, if you do not invest in biopharmaceutical companies, where else can you invest? So recently, if you take a look at this data, those companies that actually received investment, if you compare this data to the next one, if you compare the amount and performance, the bio industry shows much higher investment compared to other sectors. And in terms of Korea, Korea is a very strong IT company and software, so IT is also showing a lot of high performance, but biotech companies are also showing a lot of rapid increasing growth. And actually, This is another piece of data from our website, and it shows it compares the performance between 2020 and 2021. And in terms of growth rate, the ICT service and biotech and retail service, if you compare these data, then you can see the significant growth. And also, this left chart is March 2020, and there on the right is March 2021. So all of you, ladies and gentlemen, here and all the Ministry of Health staff members, officers, I will let you deliver my appreciation again. And here, if you not take a look at this slide, not only did the amount of investment increased, but also our profit increased as well. If you take a look at this data, then let's say if I receive 20 billion Korean won, then you receive 300 billion won as a return. So this ratio was really higher compared to other sectors. And there are some other sectors that is suffering a lot of challenges. So compared to those sectors, bio sector is growing really well. And these companies, you definitely know these well, and I'll tell you what kind of investments in what specific companies that I make and what kind of growth I made. So, for example, LOK Bioscience and LOI and Research Institutes, a genomic company, and Tium Bio, among other companies. And I suppose that you are fully aware of these companies. And I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation that there are almost a dozen of government entities that are investing in this, and Ministry of Health is also hosting and supporting this investment. And there are 416 million, and there are currently ongoing funds and liquidified funds. If you take consideration, there are 460 billion Korean won in total. And if you consider those all sourced funds and intra funds, then the total amount is slightly below 800 billion Korean won. And so far, there are some other drop funds, and if there are 5 different drop funds currently under investment, and there are 65 companies, and the total amount of 330 million Korean won being invested, and which is accumulatively 370 billion. And below here, it shows the liquidifying performance, and statistically, it is currently showing some significant results. And the numbers here are really high. If you are engaged in this industry, you will surely know that this is high. If you made this investment and got this result, then it is high performance, of course. And so clearly, it is showing an excellent performance so far. And additionally, lastly, there was 1 trillion Korean won worth of investment in smart investment fund. And during the post-corona pandemic, we are aiming this fund to further excel our goal. And this is not face-to-face in Green New Deal. And so we cover these 3 different topics and make investment. And for this Korea fund, 3 government entities, including Ministry of Health, are making 1 billion Korean won of investment. And the key characteristics is that private sectors investors are acting as mentors to make investment here. And among those retail investments or those institute investors, Shinsegae Corporation and Krafton and Musinsa, among other 16 companies, are they're spending their investment into this fund. And from each different fields, fund managers are making investment in this fund of funds, venture capital. And when when Park City, who was a previous professional golf player, who made Korea famous and also made investment here that gained a lot of attention from other Korean citizens. So through this fund, we're keep working on these sectors, including biotechnology, and we're continuously making investment in these different sectors.
그래서 저희 오늘 그 바이오코리아 하고 저희 보건복지부실에서
So for today's BioKorea Investor, Ministry of Health and Welfare and Ministry of SMEs and Startups are putting utmost efforts to make this success. And despite this COVID-19 pandemic, various bio venture capital companies are in close cooperation with Ministry of Health and Ministry of SMEs and Startups. They will further keep their working on their efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Junyoung Park.